Broadcasting from the southernmost headquarters of the Exceptional Conservative Network, it's the Willie Lawson Show. It's the hippest urban conservative trip in America. And now, your host, Willie Lawson. All right. Well, welcome to the Willie Lawson Show here on the Exceptional Conservative Network, powered by SHR Media and syndicated by our friends at High Plains Talk Radio. We appreciate you being here. It's going to be a tremendous program today we've got for you. We've got my guest, just a little bit, Fausta Wertz. Fausta from faustasblog.com, and if you've not been to faustasblog.com, then you are missing a large component of your news cycle. Forget fake news, forget all that other stuff. It's just the stuff that you're missing. It's the stuff that mainstream media is not telling you about because it may scare you. And it works against, most times it works against their narrative. And we've already learned that anything that works against the left's narrative, they really don't want you all that. They don't want you all that involved in. They just don't want you all that involved in. So Fausta's going to tell us about. We're going to talk a little bit about Donald and the Wall, because that's important that we talk about Donald and the Wall, and how this is really affecting places like Mexico. We're going to talk a little bit about the Southern Wall in Mexico, because that's something else that mainstream media is not telling you about. They just refuse to tell you about that there is a wall dividing the southern border of Mexico with the rest of Central America. And basically, it's for the same reason that anybody in the United States would want a real live border. It's for the very, very, very same reason. For the very same reason. It's because they want to make sure, they want to make good and darn sure that their resources, which are limited, can be protected. They want to make sure that ne'er-do-wells from other places in Central America and coming up through South America can be stopped. They want to make sure that they can protect their country, their nation. Because Mexico is a sovereign nation. As is Canada, as is France, as is Saudi Arabia, China, North and South Korea. See, this is the nutty part. This is where the loony left goes completely off the rails. When they talk about no border, no wall, no borders, no ban. What? This whole idea that you can have a country, that you can have a country and have no borders. And you know what? And let anybody in you want, and that people, or the nutty idea, and it is a nutty idea that people have the right. People have. Let's listen to what I'm saying. Have the right to be here. They have a right. That non-citizens have a constitutional right to be here in this country. An illegal alien doesn't have any more of a constitutional right to be in America than I have a right to be a German citizen. Because I feel that I identify with the German people. That is the most asinine thing ever, frankly. No, I don't. And if I choose to say, you know what, I think I'd like to live in Germany, what I have to do, listen to me, what I have to do is, first of all, I have to move to Germany. Second of all, I have to learn the German language, at least to the point where I can read the important legal documents of the day. And I have to assimilate into the German culture. Did you hear what I said? So I don't have a right to live as an American in Germany just because German law does not afford me that right. German culture does not afford me that right. Natural law does not afford me that right. So this whole idea that anybody can come into the United States just because is insane. It's absolutely, positively insane. It's insane. And I'm telling you that if you think that if you think that this is the end of all of this, you're wrong. And if you think that these kind of crazy policies will not have a lingering effect in this country if we don't nip them at the bud, you are wrong, homeboy. You are crazy, insane wrong. Crazy, insane wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk to Fausta here in a little bit, and she's going to give us the 411 on what's really happening in some of these countries, because we're getting the whole idea that, well, Trump's not getting along with the president of Mexico. Well, we're going to find out from somebody who studies these things, who knows about these things, who has connection in these things, if indeed that is the case. Now, I don't personally believe that's the case, and so we are going to see from my friend Fausta, if indeed this is the case. Is Trump getting along better with the president of Mexico and the folks in South America, because that matters in a way that mainstream media damn sure ain't telling you about. How that's going. Because there is, and the mainstream media never mentions to you, that there is truly a link between Central America, South America, and the Middle East. So you never think about these things, do you? Of course not. Which is why you're here with me today, because I'm here to hip you to all the stuff that they're not going to tell you about. They're not going to tell you about because it crushes their narrative. It absolutely frickin' crushes their narrative. And that's what we're here to do today. Hashtag crush the narrative. I trust that you are going to be, that you enjoyed yesterday. What's today? Yes, yesterday. Is it today? Yes. Yeah. I'm drawing a blank. I know that it's today. I'm sorry. Today, after this show, on Money with Melanie, Ebony Williams, a Fox contributor, will be on with Melanie Collette right after this program. Until we got to take a little break. We'll be back right after these messages with our guest. With class. Hey, Fausta. Fantastic demeanor. And a wine glass. Hang on, let me get my mic. Filled to the brim. What you're going to hear is the finest in urban conservative talk. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the brand new Willie Lawson Show here on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Innovation, inspiration, and imagination. Three important characteristics that are important in any business, but especially in real estate when you're looking for your forever home. And when that home is a new home, there are very, very many things that must go right. The financing must be on point. The furnishings must be on point. The location and neighborhood must be on point. And if you need someone to get that right the first time, you have to go to my friend Gary Knight at New Homes of Tampa Bay. That's New Homes of Tampa Bay. You can reach him on the web at www.newhomestpa.com. If you're looking for innovation through technology, inspiration, and imagination through hard work, www.newhomestpa.com. There's no reason to wait for a special occasion to send flowers. No reason to wait until you miss a birthday or an anniversary or Valentine's Day to send flowers. All you have to do is get a hold of my friend Christine at Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, www.bloomingdays.com. That's www.bloomingdays.com. And tell her that you want to send the very best, that you care enough to send the very best. One of FTD's top florists in all of the United States, always in the top 100 of flower shops in the United States. That's Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, www.bloomingdays.com. Forget calling 1-800-something, www.bloomingdays.com. All right. Well, welcome back to the Willie Lawson Show here on the Exceptional Conservative Network. We appreciate you being where you are today, and on the New Homes Tampa Bay Newsmaker line is my friend Fausta Wertz, Fausta's blog, and we're going to have a tremendous, fantabulous conversation on what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Well, good morning, Fausta. How are you?
Don't you love it being in Florida instead of being in the Northeast?
Yeah, we were just talking about that a little bit ago. It's really much nicer being in Florida in February, especially early February, than maybe Newark, New Jersey.
My son actually lives in New York, but New York is better when there is snow because you're not bound by having the turnpike closed and all that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I am no longer a fan. Last year I was in Kenosha, Wisconsin for Super Tuesday, and it snowed like 6 inches, and frankly I thought I was going to die. I thought it was the worst thing. It was the worst thing ever. I was like, oh my God. It's funny. I left Tampa and it was like, I don't know, it was like 75 degrees. When I left Kenosha to come back to Tampa, it was 9 degrees when I woke up the morning I left Kenosha. 9.
Oh.
And 9 is not a temperature. 9 is a shoe size.
That's perfect, yes.
It was awful.
It's true.
It was just horrible.
It's brilliant.
You know, Fausta and I met through Blog Talk Radio, golly, way back in 2008, way back in the days of Heading Right Radio on Blog Talk Radio. Alan Levy thought that with the election of Barack Obama, that those of us who weren't leftists would not have anything more to say ever. And what's happened is that the election of Barack Obama has been a bounty, open a whole cottage industry for those of us who aren't leftists. So Alan, for all that you got right, you got that part wrong. And Fausta had a show about Latin America. And she has a blog, Fausta's blog. Is it faustasblog.com, Fausta?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. And so you can check out Fausta's blog, faustasblog.com. And she's kind of turned into an expert on things happening south of the border and its connections to other parts around the world. Fausta, there's a lot of talk right now about Donald's Wall. I've just sort of nicknamed it Donald's Wall, because I can't come up with something as clever as Obamacare. So it's Donald's Wall, and how it's going to be built and how it's going to be paid for, and all the posturing back and forth. The mainstream media is saying that Donald Trump's got a horrific relationship with the president of Mexico, and the wall is a sticking point, and we've seen protests and people in the streets with their pink hats on crying uncontrollably about this wall thing. How do you see this whole border issue ramping up?
The first one is the political part, the second one is the labor part, and the third one is the national security part. As far as the politics go, both Donald Trump and Peña Nieto, and whoever may be the president of Mexico, this is not exclusive to Peña Nieto, are going to engage in a lot of posturing for domestic consumption. So they're talking to their base rather than talking to each other. And also, these are men who are used to negotiating in a rather conflictive way, by which I mean that they're going to start asking for outrageous things, and then they're going to eventually agree to something that may not be all that far from what they had in mind initially. So that's one thing. As far as the labor part, it can be solved in a way that is non-conflictive. I mean, there is an organization called the Hispanic American Center for Economic Research, which is ACER, H-A-C-E-R, that years ago proposed what they call a red card, which would mean that somebody who wants to come and work in the United States would be registered permanently with a microchip card, very similar to what the credit cards are looking like now, with their information, and they could work in either country, which would not be all that difficult to do considering the amount of traffic that there is between the two countries. Now, the real difficult problem, as I see it, is the national security part, because right now, and this sounds horrible, but it's, as far as I can see, it's a fact. And I've been researching this, as you've said, for years. Essentially, all the traffic that goes between the two countries, when it comes from the south involving people, drugs, and crime, is completely controlled by the cartels. And the problem with the cartels is that they are so predominant in this northern section of Mexico near the border that newspapers in those areas essentially self-censor themselves because they're afraid of being killed. Why is that? Because they have been killed. You know, there have been reporters and that were shot in their offices. There were a number of newspaper offices that were essentially blown out of existence by a bomb. There's been arson and all sorts of other violence. So you have a very big problem on that, compounded by the fact that there is also a lot of unknown people who are coming from other parts of the world, from other countries in Central America, from countries in South America, and now with ISIS and Al-Qaeda becoming partners in drug trafficking, because you have to realize a lot of Al-Qaeda and a lot of terrorism is financed through drug trafficking. And the Brazilian and Mexican cartels are expanding into Europe with European partners. A lot of these people are willing to bring in anybody who will pay them. I mean, the cartels don't care where the money comes from, as long as they're the ones in charge and they're the ones getting paid. So I see it as three different problems under one issue. So it's parts of it can be solved. I think a fence could be built. I mean, certainly the Saudis are now building a fence. Israel has had a fence for many years, and it would have to be a fence that would take into consideration the problem of the tunnels, which the Sinaloa cartel has become expert at. I mean, to the point that the head of the Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo, escaped from prison twice.
Yeah,
one of which was air conditioned.
It was like El Chapo was like it was like Shawshank Redemption. He just disappeared. He just put a hole in the floor of his cell and disappeared. Like a fart in the wind, he was just gone.
In a very fancy way, his tunnel had air conditioning and lights and a rail track and everything else.
They had Wi-Fi. I think they had Wi-Fi too.
Right now.
I think there was a Starbucks down there. It was rather nice. It was rather nice. You know, it's interesting, Fausta. You mentioned that a lot of these organizations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Hamas, all these people, all these terrorist organizations that we know have been terrorist organizations for a long, long time, have decided that, you know what, maybe petrodollars isn't the way to go right now, because they get some of their funding with petrodollars, obviously, but they also get their money in the drug trade. So as clumsy as Trump has been, and I'll admit to anybody that this is not the smoothest guy you've ever seen in your life. You know, Trump is not Denzel Washington in smoothness. But he's not all wrong in what he's saying about making sure that we can stop the flow of drugs. Because if we can stop the flow of drugs, we can start to break the back of some of these terrorist organizations. Is that, again, I'm not nearly as eloquent as Denzel either, but is that kind of what you think they're trying to do?
I think there's a significant part of that. There have been, over the years, several congressional reports on the connection between drug trafficking and terrorism. Presently, the Colombian FARC, which is, by the way, the largest Marxist narco-trafficking organization in the world, is going to become a political party in Colombia after they signed this agreement, which was sponsored by not only the Cuban government, but also the U.S. and the Vatican. And their members, who are not going to be working in Colombia, are being recruited by the largest cartel in Brazil, the largest criminal organization in Brazil, because they have experience with heavy weaponry. Meanwhile,
holy Jesus.
The PCC in Brazil has teamed up with the Italian mafia to bring in cocaine into Europe. So we're talking a vast range. I mean, we're talking a globalization of crime to an extent that we had never seen before in the history of man, because the technology didn't exist back then.
And MSNBC is strangely silent on all of this, Fausta. Why is that?
I couldn't tell you. I haven't watched MSNBC in a long time. The last time I watched MSNBC was on election night to see how depressed they were.
You just wanted to see them cry and be sad. That's kind of mean, because I did the very same thing. I was like, no, switch over there. You know they're crying. This will be great. Is it, but that's, I think that if more people, and well, Fox News doesn't cover this either, really, to be fair, but I think if more people, especially more people in the center and the right, knew what you just said, could hear what you just said, that this was actually going on in the world, I think they would have a deeper understanding of why some of these things that seem by themselves not such great ideas are really just a piece of this puzzle of the things that are coming. I mean, it seems crazy to me that a drug cartel could decide to be so big and powerful and fearless that they're going to become a political party. They're like, hey, let's get together. We'll run candidates. What? Really?
The thing with Colombia goes back many years, because Colombia has essentially been under a war. Some call it a civil war. I wouldn't call it so much a civil war as a terror war. And having an agreement, coming to an agreement after 50 years, it certainly was, how can I put it? It was a necessity. My problems with the agreement is that it's granting the FARC 10 unelected seats in Congress, and it's legalizing a lot of their actions for which the Colombian and the U.S. the Colombian people and the United States are going to be paying for, while the FARC does not incur basically on any expenses. So that's the problem. Then there is another thing that we haven't touched on, and that's the growing influence of Iran in Latin America. But that's another long story too.
Well, you know what? That's we're gonna we'll have you back, but we need to talk about those connections too, because most Americans are fat, dumb, and happy, and like me, and have no idea that these things are going on, and how interconnected they are, and how we have to, as Americans, really sort of take, and not to steal this in any sort of strange, scary nationalist way. We've got to think about our own interests first, because if we don't, we could find ourselves in a place that we never thought that we'd find ourselves, because we didn't take care of business early. We didn't do the things we needed to do to protect ourselves. And I'm not saying that the wall is the end all, obviously, but it just seems to be a part of all this other stuff. You mentioned Iran. Now, with Iran partnering with other parts of South America, is it important now that through President Obama's deal with Iran, the ability to, I personally think that Iran is already nuclear. I think they already have the capability. I think they're just waiting for an opportunity, or at least the opportunity to sell that technology to the highest bidder, because that seems to be the deal. Could it be a situation where Iran could become a nuclear Iran and sell that technology to some of the, like FARC or some of these other criminal organizations that are roaming the planet?
That is a possibility. I don't know how likely it is, because I really don't know much about internal Iranian politics. the problem that I see is that there is a lot of influence in Latin America from Iran, and it's continuing to expand to the point that you have, for instance, when Hugo Chavez was alive, he ceded a shipyard in Isla Margarita in Venezuela to Iranians, and that is within firing distance with regular weapons of the Panama Canal. So that's where I see the problem. So once, the Panama Canal was recently expanded, and China is doing a tremendous amount of commerce through the Panama Canal after the expansion. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but now it's even more. So you have a great deal of dependence for world trade from China and from Asian countries into our hemisphere, which would affect directly not only most of the countries in South America, which are dependent on selling basic materials and commodities to the Chinese, but also ports in deep water ports in the United States that are being expanded to accommodate the new ships. So, I mean, it's a problem. It's a military problem, but it's also a problem that would affect essentially everybody's livelihood.
Wow!
On a global scale.
So the bad guys could shut down trade for most of the planet. How? That's a cheery thought. Thank you, Fausta.
I'm sorry to depress you so early in the morning. By the way, I mean, none of what I'm saying is it comes up in the news, but it's not like it's secret information. I mean, all my information comes from newspapers in the countries in the original language. It comes from congressional reports, which are available online. It comes from English language media from all over the world, and I mean, it's there to be found if you look for it. The crime reports, there is an excellent website called Inside Crime, and they do wonderful reports on Latin America and the criminal organizations and the organized crime organizations around the world. And also, a lot of the European newspapers do dedicated articles in English that can be read. Another one is the people who do the what is their name? They do the Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. Mm-hmm. So the information can be found. I just don't know why the news media ignore it, and instead they're dedicating themselves to talking about Ivanka Trump or some other silly stuff, which I had
John Daly on last week, and John Daly said that the media has turned into especially the news media has turned into uses a model of either entertainment model. That's why you go after Ivanka Trump, or you go after Barron or Chelsea or whatever, or is this sort of sports mentality where you have the good guys and the bad guys, and the whole idea of reporting honestly and fairly and reporting things that are quite frankly of real importance has gone by the wayside. And John Daly, who's been on in media forever and ever, believes that things are not going to change unless you do exactly what you mentioned. These sources are available to all of us, and we need to start becoming our own news agencies. Again, you can reach Fausta at Fausta's blog. That's Fausta's FAUSTASBLOG.com. And the first article up is an article that got posted yesterday. El Chapo's lawyers want more access. Do they really? Well, isn't that special? I hope they get it. I hope that he has to just dig tunnels for the rest of his life, because he seems to be really good at it.
Definitely. I mean, the kind of tunnels that Chapo was having made, you have to add a real engineer to it. I mean, a mining engineer at that, because of the way they were constructed. But right now, what happened with the Chapo was that the Mexican government extradited him to the United States while President Obama was still in office. I'm not sure why. I guess they didn't want to negotiate with Donald Trump. And now he's in a jail in Brooklyn waiting for trial. And apparently the negotiation as to what the terms were going to be for his extradition were not clear enough. And so this is bringing lawsuits and all sorts of other problems. I'm not sure why he was released in a hurry, but this is a very high value, how can I put it? The kind of information that El Chapo could have provided under a more standard negotiation, because you have to realize every time somebody's extradited, as I understand it, every time somebody's extradited to the United States, there are negotiations as to the term of the extradition and the kind of conditions that the person is going to be tried under, such as the number of lawyers who's paying for the defense and so on. And it looks like they just sent him here because the Mexican government doesn't want to have a negotiation with the Trump administration on this character while other things were going on. And by the way, also, let's not forget that a lot of the immigration, anything that has to do with immigration, is colored through a political correctness prism. I mean, like, last week I was called a racist because I pointed out that to somebody who was saying how handsome Enrique Peña Nieto is, I pointed out that the guy is 5'5".
So being short, so pointing out that somebody is a midget, I'm sorry, that's a politically incorrect word too, is a little person, it somehow makes you, Fausta Wertz, racist. Wow.
Well, it also shows, a certain ignorance as to what the race situations in Mexico are. I mean, Peña Nieto is a Caucasian man, if you look at him, and a member of the ruling class, which has not taken into consideration, as a group, a ruling class that had not taken into consideration the welfare of its people. And at the same time, there is evidence that the Juarez cartel paid for part of his electoral campaign when he was running for office.
Wow.
So,
there's so much, Fausta, that it's interesting. There's such ignorance, and some of it willful, and some of it I don't think people really understand going on. But that's why I ask you here, and I always ask you on, because you always explain things and open up doors and open up my eyes to stuff that I didn't see, that I don't know, and scares me. And quite frankly, when I'm done here, I'm just going to go back and get in my bed and pull the covers up over my head until this is all over. That's what my plan for the rest of the day is, everybody. So listen, don't call me, because my phone will be off and I'll be under my bed. Fausta, thank you ever so much for for joining us this morning. Just like always, you're always amazing. It's good to have you in Florida, and if I find a way to break through the security fence that cordons off South Florida, I'm going to come and see you because I don't speak the language of South Florida, so I imagine they have restrictions for people like me.
Yes, we need to do a Florida podcast. It's a strange place.
It is a strange place. I love it. I call it home. All right, Fausta. Thank you ever so much for coming. And we'll talk in a little bit, and you and I will put something together about how wonderful the state of Florida is, especially in February. Florida in February. Again, friends, this is Fausta Wertz. Fausta, you can reach her at faustasblog.com. Do that right now. Put that on your blog roll. If they still have blog rolls, like I may do, put that on your blog roll. Make sure that you read it every day, because then you'll understand a whole bunch more than what the mainstream media is telling you. And then you'll wonder, why aren't y'all telling us this stuff? Why aren't you saying this? And I'm not talking about just MSNBC and the clowns over there. I'm talking about all of them. I'm talking about Fox, and I'm talking about CNN, the Clinton News Network, and the rest of those morons, and the New York Times, and all these other sources that are just ignoring these really important facts, things that are going to be extremely necessary to understand as we move forward. Again, Fausta, thank you ever so much for coming, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Willie. It's always a pleasure and a real honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon. Listen, we got to go to break. We'll be back with more of the Willie Lawson Show right after these messages. Innovation, inspiration, and imagination. 3 important characteristics that are important in any business, but especially in real estate when you're looking for your forever home. And when that home is a new home, there are very, very many things that must go right. The financing must be on point. The furnishings must be on point. The location and neighborhood must be on point. And if you need someone to get that right the first time, you have to go to my friend Gary Knight at New Homes of Tampa Bay. That's New Homes of Tampa Bay. You can reach him on the web at www.newhomestpa.com. If you're looking for innovation through technology, inspiration and imagination through hard work, www.newhomestpa.com. There's no reason to wait for a special occasion to send flowers. No reason to wait until you miss a birthday or an anniversary or Valentine's Day to send flowers. All you have to do is get a hold of my friend Christine at Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, www.bloomingdays.com. That's www.bloomingdays.com. And tell her that you want to send the very best, that you care enough to send the very best. One of FTD's top florists in all of the United States, always in the top 100 of flower shops in the United States. That's Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, www.bloomingdays.com. Forget calling 1-800-something, www.bloomingdays.com. It's great to have partners, but it's even better when one of your partners is one of the finest urban conservatives in America. That's my friend Kevin Batts. Kevin Batts of Red River Chronicle TV. Red River Chronicle TV is taking the internet by storm. With fabulous production, amazing commentary, and incredible insight, Red River TV is the thing that we'll all be watching in 2017. They are the people, Kevin and his wife Janelle, are the voices that are going to make the difference in urban America in 2017. So get in on the ground floor. Go to www.redriverchronicle.com and subscribe to Red River TV today.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on New Day, Black and Red.
This program is being syndicated on the High Plains Talk Radio Network. For more information, go to www.highplainstalkradio.com. All right, welcome back to the Willie Lawson Show here on Blog Talk on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Thank you so much. Yes, you have to forgive me. I've been doing that since March 2008, and I'd like to thank my guest Fausta Wertz for being on. She is amazing, isn't she? Isn't she amazing? Stuff that you never thought about, because mainstream media will not tell you that there's a South American Iranian, Iranian connection. They won't tell you that the world is, and because it sounds a little like conspiratorialist that the world is against us, but it really is. It really is. And it is the president's job, their first job, their main job. And for a lot of people, their only job is to make sure that this country and its citizens are protected. And for the past 8 years, all of these other things have been going on. And our president has not had our best interest at heart, my opinion. When we're talking about Hugo Chavez, when he was alive, opening up his ports and allowing Iranian warships in those ports, that's problematical. That is problematical. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if Captain Cupcake and the Snowflake Warriors are in the street. It doesn't make any difference to me. When the real bad guys are plotting. When we're talking about FARC making a deal to get 10 seats in government for free, pretty much. We're talking about some of the most dangerous drug cartels in the world being a part of governments, being able to make laws or stop law enforcement at our southern border. This is important, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is important stuff. This is more important than some snowflake with a women's degree from Vassar who can't find a job at a Starbucks because 10,000 Syrian refugees got hired in front of her. This is bigger and more important than her temper tantrum in her pussy hat. This is more important. This is much more important. This is why the adults have got to come back to the table. We need to have adults in charge. That's all there is to it. The time for the amateur hour is over. The amateur hour is over. It's time for the adults to show up. It's time for the adults to say, no, this is dangerous. We're not doing this. This is not in our best interest. Not everybody thinks your butt's a cream puff and wants to bite it. No. It's time. And I pray that Donald Trump is that guy, and I hope that and I know that that General Mattis is, and I hope that General Kelly can be that guy. That we're just not gonna kowtow and fall over to your whining like some 4-year-old in Toys R Us. We're just not going to anymore. And my advice to you, as you listen to this show on the Exceptional Conservative Network, and you listen to the other programs on the Exceptional Conservative Network, and if you haven't been to our website, you need to go to our website. Go to the exceptionalconservativeshow.com and click on the TECN AM tab, and that way you can participate in the chat room for all our morning shows. And if you go to the TECN PM tab, you can participate in all our afternoon programs. It's important that you participate, because no matter what Cornel West and any of these asshats say, our country, our liberty, our freedom is hanging in the balance. And it doesn't have anything to do with Islamophobia, homophobia, racism, misogyny. If anything, the rest of the world is looking at us and going, don't they know that they're under attack? Why are they running around like crazy people? Why aren't they doing the things, both in their national security and in their economics, to protect themselves? My grandma had a phrase for this. It commonly referred to children that were out of control. It was like, they're so free until they're foolish. Friends, we are so free until we are foolish. We simply refuse to give any credence to the real threats to our liberty. We are caught up in this cult of personality, as evidenced by 8 years of President Barack Obama. Now, I'll tell you what, if you listen to my shows all along, I didn't spend every show banging, and bashing Barack Obama. Because frankly, there was other stuff going on, but you've got to know that in 2011, 2012, Barack Obama had the worst numbers of any sitting president in history. And it just didn't make good sense to ask for more. But the American public, who are caught up in the cult of personality, egged on by the entertainment section of these news bureaus, chose to elect Barack Obama again. Now, I'm going to be honest with you that I think that some people on the right even have the same problem with Donald Trump, because he is a strong personality, that he is a larger than life figure. But we have to make sure that we continually understand there is more at stake than your feelings. There's more at stake than if somebody says something that may offend you. There is more at stake. Our very way of life, quite frankly, is at stake. So some of this back and forth stuff that may or may not matter in 5 years, heck, most of it won't matter in 5 minutes. We've got to see through this. We got to look through that to what your goal is. And if we don't, we're going to find ourselves in the dustbin of history wondering what happened. And as history looks back, and they'll say, why didn't they see that coming? Why couldn't they see that coming? Why couldn't they see their enemies at their door? What were they so involved in? What had their attention so much that they couldn't see their own destruction coming, mostly by their own hand, mostly by their own neglect? And it'll be that we were involved in things, so we were so deeply involved in the minutia and picking around the edges of most issues that we would not see the things that will be our destruction. That the wolves were at the door. When you talk about the Iranians and the Argentinians hooking up militarily, when you're talking about some of the largest criminal organizations in the world becoming global, and we're not paying attention, and and this information is there, and we just won't pay attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of work to do, and we're ready for the job here at the Exceptional Conservative Network, powered by SHR Media and syndicated by our friends at High Plains Talk Radio. We are ready for the work. Make sure you join me tomorrow, where my scheduled guest will be Mason Weaver. Mason Weaver will bring such incredible truth and gravitas to this situation. It'll probably crush you for the day, but it'll be a good kind of crushing. You know what I mean? A good kind of crushing. Thank you ever so much for coming today. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Willie Lawson Show. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, And for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourselves. We will see you when we see you.